Well, welcome to this panel discussion. It's part of Interfaith Awareness Week, which is sponsored by a group called POINT, P-O-I-N-T. It used to be the Poway Interfaith Council, but what we have discovered is that the interfaith nature of this organization is so far beyond the city of Poway now that it really embraces most of San Diego County. So we just have gone with the acronym POINT, trying to point to what we can do together in supporting one another in the work of compassion, which is why we're here today. This panel discussion is about compassion at home, school, work, and I would also say in government. And we're going to talk a little bit about how using compassion as a guiding value might impact how we make decisions within these different areas of life, how we might choose programming, and how we might just try to be as teens in the world if compassion is a guiding value. This particular panel discussion within Interfaith Awareness Week is sponsored by Compassionate San Diego. My name is Dale Suggs, and I am the team lead of Compassionate San Diego. And Compassionate San Diego is a grassroots movement that's united to promote, strengthen, and celebrate compassionate action in San Diego and its surrounding communities. We're trying to bring to life the principles that have been articulated in what now is an international charter for compassion, a document which uplifts the cause of compassion in our communities and has become so much more than a document. It has become a movement. And Compassionate San Diego is kind of a subsidiary, let's say, of Compassionate California. And Compassionate California is in the process of trying to get our legislature to designate California as a compassionate state. And one of our goals as Compassionate San Diego is to get the county of San Diego and the city of the San Diego to choose also to make compassion a guiding value in how they do business. So that's a little bit about Compassionate San Diego. And I'm going to stop there. I might say more about it as we go along. But I want to invite our panelists, if they would, to just introduce themselves. Just to say a word of your name, how you kind of fit into this home, school, work, government picture that we're talking about, and where you are in the world. Because you never know within the COVID world in which we live, where exactly somebody is going to be joining us from. So let's do this in the order in which we're going to speak. So I will invite Dallas. Would you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Dallas, and Dale invited me to be a part of this panel because I'm a mother, and so I have a 10-year-old daughter. And we just moved here last year, last summer, in the middle of the pandemic, which is still raging on. So we've been residents of North County. San Diego is where we live for 1 year. So as a new resident, he thought I might have some interesting. So, hi.
Thank you, Dallas. I believe we were going to go to Emily.
Great, thanks, Dale. And welcome, everyone. My name is Emily Schell, and I am on the leadership team for Compassionate San Diego, which is an organization that I was very happy to join in that my day job, or the work that I do regularly, is as the executive director of the California Global Education Project. And so I work at the University of San Diego in the School of Leadership and Education Sciences. And my work is all about supporting kindergarten through 12th grade educators, primarily teachers, but also administrators, to develop global competence with themselves and with their students, so that we have more interdisciplinary studies and 21st century learning skills, and some attention to these global issues that we are confronting, whether this is in a science classroom, a math classroom, an English classroom, or an elementary classroom. I'm a lifelong educator and taught here in San Diego Unified, worked at the San Diego County Office of Education for many years, and then spent 20 years teaching pre-service teachers at San Diego State University in the College of Education there. So now I'm happy to work with teachers not only here in San Diego, but across the state of California. And I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you so much. Brett?
Hello, my name is Brett Hall. I am the program coordinator for Community Health Improvement Partners, or CHIP. We are a nonprofit organization that has been in San Diego for 25 years. Our mission is to advance long-term sustainable solutions to priority health needs through collaboration and community engagement. The specific initiative that I work on is the San Diego County Suicide Prevention Council, or the SPC. The SPC is a countywide collaborative with a mission to prevent suicides and its devastating consequences here in San Diego. And Dale actually is a part of our faith subcommittee for the Suicide Prevention Council, which is how I ended up here today. And just a little bit about myself, I have a master's in social work, and I live here in San Diego. So I'm very much looking forward to this conversation about compassion, get back to those social work roots for sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brett. Again, my name is Dale Suggs, and I am the team lead for Compassionate San Diego. I also am the director of the beloved Compassion Network, and a pastor of a group called, just simply called Beloved. And on occasion, you'll run into us as Beloved San Diego. And I come to this conversation as one who is all in, following compassion as a guiding value in my life, in my work. And that's how I got connected with these people who are sharing in this panel today. Each of them are people who have chosen to make the value of compassion not just something that they think about or even feel, but something they act on, something that they put into action. And our goal is to talk about how we, as citizens of San Diego, as people of faith, as people who care about people, to have that conversation about how do we put compassion into action. This grows out of the objectives of Compassionate San Diego as an organization. I want to share with you just a couple of those objectives. To create a network of communities in San Diego County that honors compassion in their everyday decision-making and activities. That each community would find its own path to establishing compassion as a driving and motivating force to evaluating and addressing its own discomforts. To reach a formal resolution for San Diego County to join other communities worldwide to have the compassionate label as part of the Charter of Compassion. And that the City of San Diego and other communities within the county also affirm and sign the charter and adopt compassionate policies in their government. and administration. You'll notice that there are a couple of things in there that are just immensely important to me. The idea of network, the idea about compassion used in everyday decision-making, compassion as motivating force and evaluative principle, and the adoption of policies, whether it, policies at home are usually the rules that we deal with our children. I have 4 daughters. I'm totally there on how you have to have policies at home. But policies also at school and at work and within government, that we intentionally make compassionate action a way of being. Now, we said a few words about the Charter of Compassion. I think it's important that I say a word about it simply because it ties into Interfaith Week. Let me read you just the opening paragraph to the Charter of Compassion. The principle of compassion lies at the heart of all religious, ethical, and spiritual traditions, calling us always to treat all others as we wish to be treated ourselves. Compassion impels us to work tirelessly to alleviate the suffering of our fellow creatures, to dethrone ourselves from the center of our world and put another there, and to honor the inviolate sanctity of every single human being, treating everybody without exception with absolute justice, equity, and respect. And I wanted to share that because I think it speaks to the reality that I know that I teach and I've experienced within Compassion in San Diego, and I've experienced in Point through Interfaith Awareness Week, is that compassion is not just a thought, it's not just a feeling, it is a response. It is treating everybody without exception with justice, equity, and respect. It's not just saying, oh, you know, I love you, I have compassion for you, but taking that which is within that inner movement, and putting it into action. The definition of compassion that I usually work with goes like this. Compassion is being moved in one's depths by the pain or bliss of another or oneself, and responding in ways that intend to ease suffering and promote flourishing. Being moved in one's depths by the pain or bliss of another, or even our own pain or bliss, and then responding in ways to ease suffering and promote flourishing. Compassion without action, in my world, is just sentimentality. And we are here to talk about so much more than that. We want to talk about how do we provide respect, justice, equity to every human being, every person in San Diego County. Well, I'm going to stop talking now. I've talked for quite a while, and I'm going to invite our first panelist to say a word. I've asked each person to consider a question just as a jumping off point for what they might want to share. Our format is that each person will share up to 5 minutes, and then we will engage in conversation with one another. But this was the question I gave to them as a jumping off point. How would our decision-making, programming, and communities be changed if compassion were the guiding value behind who they are and what they do? See, I know the reality is that we tend to guide our home, school, work, business, government around other values like efficiency, expedience, cost, savings, political agenda. My question was, what if compassion were the guiding principle? And so I'll invite Dallas to share.
I'll just say I don't have any of those solutions to how to make that happen. But when I thought about the question, I thought about from a personal viewpoint, specifically as a mom, where I see compassion lacking, where I think change could happen. So for me, I think that the lack of compassion in action starts with the birth of your child. Basically, as a working mom, you don't necessarily have maternity leave. It's not guaranteed in this country. It's up to employers. I had to use FMLA and not get paid and all sorts of things. And you don't even realize as a normal citizen, until it happens to you, you don't realize different policies. And that could go for across the board for all sorts of things that I'm sure I don't even realize are going on because they haven't personally happened to me. So I just was struck at the time, and still definitely fight for mothers' rights, that there wasn't more compassion towards the mom once she actually has the baby. So the work situation and just even mental health, like there's not really support in place for new moms. I suffered from really bad postpartum depression. I was lucky that I had a wonderful doctor who put me in touch with a wonderful therapist, but I was very privileged in that way. And I know that not everybody has access to fantastic medical care or doctors that have time to really get to know you and know what's going on. So that's another area where I feel like there could be some more compassion and action towards new mothers and, getting themselves adjusted to their new life and their mental well-being. And then it just continues on from there, right? Then you have childcare, again, with working moms. It's crazy expensive. And that's if you're coming from a place of privilege where you can afford nice daycare. There's, again, this huge disparity and wealth gap that is present between moms, working moms especially, that need to have childcare for their kids. And then I wanted to touch on school-age kids in the time of COVID. So my daughter's been in virtual school. She's about to start Monday. She's going to start in-person school. But she was online for all of last year and then 3 months of the year before, whenever everything shut down. And as a parent, I have really been surprised at the lack of compassion shown to parents of elementary age school children in particular. I mean, really all kids at this point, especially elementary school age, just because they cannot get vaccinated. And teachers and administrators. The powers that be sometimes appear, to have the other values that Dale was referring to, at the top of their mind, right? Like the efficiency and, money situations and, making sure they hit all their requirements and that are in place because of the government and the state government. But it was never expressed that we know, like, coming from like a school district or, again, the powers that be, there was never an expression of, we know you as parents have just been having to make difficult decisions all year, like since the beginning of COVID, we have to decide, do they go to school? Do they not go to school? Can they go to play dates? Can they not? Can they wear masks there? Is that going to be safe? Are they going to get sick? Are we going to get them sick? That was never discussed. No kind of like compassionary feeling towards what so many families are trying to decide about the safety for their kids and their family. So that's really struck me in the last year. And then on a good note, her school last year in our new school district, did a program called Second Step, which I had never heard of. We moved from Texas and we didn't use it in our old school district. And it's the emotional social curriculum for kids. And it's about compassion and empathy and talking about your feelings and conflict resolution and things like that. And they would take time out of the school day. They did it once a week and do different exercises, and they talk about things, and they do group discussions. And that was incredible. So something like that is, I think, unbelievably helpful to the next generation. Like if everybody had access to that, that would be amazing and could change so much. So my 5 minutes is probably up. That's my take.
Thank you so much, Dallas. I appreciate your insight. Emily, would you like to share?
Sure. Well, thank you, Dallas. That was a nice segue into my perspectives as an educator and what's happening in schools. And the very first point I wanted to make is that compassion does exist in our school communities, in our schools, from the individual teachers who bring that with them into the classroom and use compassion on a regular basis, to our school administrators, to our staff. Sometimes it's the custodian, or it's the lunch workers, or it's the folks out front making sure kids get safely in and out of their cars. And then there's the students who, of course, are the primary focus on a school campus, who bring compassion with them because of who they are and how they are and how they're being raised in their homes. And then, of course, parents and guardians are the families are an important part of every school community. And so that compassion does exist. But like I say about geography education and global education, it's everywhere. But then it's nowhere because there's not a clear focus. When you think school, you think math and reading and writing and tests and projects and those kinds of things. And you tend not to think about important components or concepts like compassion. And so it shows up and it's highly valued. No one argues with the need for compassion, but there's not that explicit focus that I think we need more and more of in our school, and consistency and validation for those teachers who bring compassion into their decision-making and into their curriculum. So what would it look like if we had more compassion driving our decisions and driving our school programs on a regular basis? Well, I think the shifts would show up in a lot of different ways. First of all, we would see schools that absolutely center students, which means those students are empowered as learners, that the cultural wealth that they bring into their classroom each and every day is honored and respected and utilized in whatever is being studied or whatever transactions are happening in that classroom or on that campus. That student agency is highly valued and supported, nurtured, acknowledged, and just the way that schools make space for students to bring their voice, to bring their experience, to bring their questions, their concerns, their feelings, all of that into whatever they're doing in schools. And when I say schools, it's not just what happens in a classroom, it's what happens in between those classes or on the playground or during a lunch period or before and after school. But another shift we would see is greater support of teachers and of administrators and of the entire school staff. It takes a lot to run a school. I thought I had a big job when I was a classroom teacher. And then I became a principal of a large inner city school with almost 1,600 students in a K-5 campus. And that's a lot of moving parts. And there's a lot of, like, someone forgot to lock the gate. Oh my gosh, those parents can't find their kids. Where did that teacher take their class right now? Or we've got a fire drill. And so there's a lot of stress, anxiety, organization, pressure, expectations. And with that, I don't know that there is a lot of, Dallas, you were talking about, considerations for parents and what's been happening with this pandemic. I think we've tended to look at, especially our teachers, as like workhorses. And you've got a job, you've got your standards, and you have your curriculum, just get to work. You've got 55 minutes, get it done. And that needs to change. And with that, the pacing of the day for everyone who works on a school campus, the pacing of the day for the students who need time to adjust. So just this idea of a one size fits all, every student follows the same schedule and the same, learns at the same rate and the same pace within a day, within a school year, and across the K-12 spectrum. So we know that that's not true, that we all learn differently. We have different modalities, learning styles. And it doesn't mean we're not all going to get there, but we seem to have created these benchmarks that are important for moving progress and for measurement in education, but somehow butt up against bringing more compassion into what the reality of teaching and learning is. We would see more checking in, more inquiry, more restorative justice circles, more community versus management in a classroom. We're not here to manage little bodies and tell them, how to respond, when to respond, how to sit, how to read, because we're all individuals. And so respect for individual learning styles and just everything that an individual brings into the classroom would be, it's difficult. I'm not saying that any of this is easy, but we would see more of those things. And yes, Dallas, we would see, and this has been great to watch the social and emotional learning, SEL movement, not just here in San Diego, but across the state of California, with the leadership of our California School Board President, Linda Darling-Hammond out of Stanford. She is a huge proponent of social and emotional learning and has ensured and has helped direct funding for the state to develop resources, professional learning, and implementation in schools. But we're seeing this as a national movement. It's an international movement and has been for many years. So very happy to see that, but we do need to see that as consistent, like you said, not just for your child, but consistently a part of the school day, which means understanding trauma-informed education, that we don't just swoop in and talk about feelings and emotions and relationships when there's a mass shooting or when there's a fire that burns down our community, but that students are living with trauma on a regular basis. And some researchers have even called out schools as a place that generates trauma for many of our students because of the way school works for them. So attention to mental health on a day-to-day basis versus, well, you don't have an IEP, so you're fine. So like sit down and get to work. And with that, also the curriculum, engaging in real world, interdisciplinary learning that reflects what actually happens in the real world. Our joke is, who lives in their adult life and from 9 to 10 does math in their life. And then from, 11 to 12 sits down and does reading and writing. But we've structured schools and siloed out these important funds of knowledge and skills and disposition. So to bring those together, which is what we do with our Global Education Project, to be more reflective and support students in living healthier lifestyles that where they can draw upon what they're learning in their different disciplines. So I'll finish up by saying that schools really need to be this place of exploration and growth, a space for that versus you're here to perform, we're here to assess you, you're going to have an exit slip every 5 minutes, you're going to, we need to see you grow on this measurement chart. And we just don't work that way. And I don't know why we keep trying to force that fit. Yes, we need to measure progress. Yes, we need to set goals. Yes, we need to move forward in our learning, on the learning spectrum. But there has been a fixation in the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years on grades and test scores and assessments. And it has butt up against our abilities to be the compassionate educators that I see us coming in as, and being told to kind of put that on the shelf because you've got to get these test scores up, or you've got to address these parent concerns, or whatever it might be. But we need to see that across all levels, from superintendents to district administrators to school board members, and it needs to not just be seen, but to be nurtured, supported, and called out and recognized, acknowledged in positive ways as well. I would much rather be in a school where we love and care for each other, and we watch out for each other, that we are a compassionate school, versus the school with the highest test scores in the district or in the state. And so I'll stop there and look forward to the conversations.
All right. Thank you, Emily. My turn, Dale?
Yes, go right
Okay.
ahead. Thank you, Brett.
Awesome. Well, like Emily kind of started off, I'll also talk about how we prioritize compassion at the organization that I work for. So once again, I work for CHIP and the San Diego County Suicide Prevention Council. So our organization overall addresses a wide array of public health and needs, such as access to care, social determinants of health, and mental health. And because we work on these topics and the topic of suicide, it's almost necessary that compassion becomes a driving force or a guiding value for our work. And although we do not provide direct services, nor are we providers, we bring communities and people together. And a lot of times those who are struggling with suicidal ideation have come to a place where they've experienced a lack of compassion. So firstly, we ensure that our SPC is open to everyone. We are not a formal membership organization, nor do we require fees. We really are here to bring everyone together, as suicide prevention is everybody's business. In our council, we have representation from the faith communities, media stakeholders, schools K through 12, higher education, government, community volunteers, survivors of suicide loss, clinicians. The list really goes on. And we truly aim to create a space that is open and welcoming to all. So by leading with compassion and understanding, ultimately, we hope that everyone feels included and is engaged in the work and believes that there's a space for them here. Because of this, we have over 70 partners participating actively in our meetings, our trainings, and events, and we're highly aware that people at the table may be experiencing a suicide loss or see suicidal thoughts themselves. So although we may not know exactly what a person has experienced or been through, we lead with respect, care, sensitivity. At the end of the day, that's most important for us in our work. We also find that with leading with compassion connects us more to our partners. This is also probably the reason why we refer to our SPC as family. Because of this, we are a stronger network and there's a collaborative spirit as opposed to one of competition. I truly believe that there's so many spaces in life that are focused on performance, productivity, efficiency. And when those expectations aren't met, individuals can often be pushed out of the system, whether it be a student being pushed out of a high school classroom, or someone being pushed out of their job in the corporate world, or someone being pushed out of the community simply for being who they are. So at the SPC, we really try to focus on pulling individuals in rather than pushing them out. Another way compassion is demonstrated through our organization is through trainings we provide to the community. So we have what's called QPR, it's Question, Persuade, Refer. It's a 90-minute training on the signs of suicide and how to use 3 steps to save a life. So at the end of each training, we actually stay longer in case someone in attendance wants to talk about a personal matter, and we open ourselves up to that, try to help as best as we can, connect to resources. We really try to center our work on the person, and in this case, individuals that are dealing with suicide. So overall, compassion allows us to really see the bigger picture of our work. And suicide is not just about the rates or the numbers. We're working with people and showing compassion to people. And that has allowed us to grow our collaborative to what it is today. And we really believe compassion and leadership creates stronger connections between people. It improves collaboration, and it raises levels of trust, and it's an integral part of our work. And I truly believe that more compassion in our community and in these spaces of government and programming, that will really lead towards our vision of zero suicides in San Diego County. So thank you. Looking forward to further discussion.
Thank you so much, Brett. Y'all bring so much to this conversation, and I'm so thankful that you answered the call to be here today to be a part of this conversation. Actually, what was just absolutely hilarious, as you were speaking, Dallas, about school issues, I'm on my phone because it's the best connection I can get where I am right now. And my phone came up with a little message that said, Gavin Newsom to talk about COVID restrictions for school, for teachers and students as the school year begins. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, here we are. And it has been an amazing challenge. From a 3 minutes from a religious perspective, as someone who is the leader of a religious community, I want to reemphasize that statement in the Charter of Compassion, that the principle of compassion lies at the heart of all religions, ethical and spiritual traditions. I also want to uplift a quote by Brian McLaren. Everybody talks about compassion, but no one tells you how to do it. And I think that's part of our challenge as this gathering and as people of faith and people in this community, is to find strategies by which we can put compassion into action. So from a leader of a religious institution's perspective, and I think this is also true for my ecumenical, my interfaith partners in point, I believe religious institutions, first and foremost, need to be schools of compassion. We need to learn it ourselves, because very often we're not very good at it. We need to teach it. We need to embody it. We need to put it into action. Compassion needs to be reflected in our lives as individuals and modeled as an institution. And that's not talked about too much in religious circles, really. How does the institution learn, teach, embody, and put compassion into action? Locally, for the community that I lead, beloved San Diego, it would impact how we hire staff, how we support staff, including things like maternity and paternity leave, how we make decisions about how we use our building, or do we even need a building, how we envision, plan, enact programming, and then how we, on the backside, evaluate, adapt, and if need be, pivot away from programming. Religious institutions have this habit of falling into a given program, and it's supposed to exist in perpetuity. But if compassion is the measure, then the question has to be asked, is what we're doing really embodying compassion in the community? It would affect how we select and train and hold accountable leadership, both staff and volunteers. And if you want a good barometer about a religious institution and how they're investing in compassion, it's a good idea to look at the budget and how money is being invested. And if you want to take a quick temperature about compassion in a religious institution, might want to read some of those policies and see if they reflect compassion or expedience or cost savings or order or some other value other than compassion. I firmly believe that compassionate action is the long game. Brett talked about that so well, about compassion is the long game. It may not bring quick results, and that's usually how we evaluate whether we're going to do something. Will it bring results really quickly? But I firmly believe that if compassion is the inspiration and motivation behind what we do, it will still be fueling the fire of change long down the line, long after strategies that are meant to just act quickly have been walked away from because they don't have a core that really brings it to life. Emily, you asked an interesting question, and I don't even know if you realized you asked the question. You were talking about how do you evaluate a local school or test scores or the community that's put together. And so, as we talk to one another, I want to open it up to the others who have gathered with us in this space, but I want to kind of plant in the back of our minds, if compassion is the guiding value, what does success look like? I think that's an interesting thing to ponder. Deanne, I cannot see the whole screen. Would you do us the great service of helping to bring forward what's in the chat and to help those who are with us to ask questions and engage us?
Yes. There was just some comments during Emily, right after Dallas had spoke too, but during Emily's sharing that even within schools, the pace of the day is so basic, but it is so overloaded. So that was emphasized by Shelley. And Brett, as she's here with us, she also wrote in the chat that yes to restorative circles within schools.
And Dale, if I could just jump in, I don't know that it has to be one or the other as far as how we measure schools. I do believe that compassion could be the driver for student achievement, for their success in those academic disciplines. However, so long as those academic scores are what the bullseye is for education, and this comes not just from within the education community, but from a lot of pressure from outside with our legislators, with our school boards, with our parent communities. I would love to see indicators for a school, for an individual student, on growth in areas of compassion or social emotional learning, or just human development. And those are the things that we believe come along with their learning of mathematics and literacy and the others. But I don't think it has to be one or the other. I think compassionate schools can be the driver for success for students, academically, socially, emotionally, physically, in all of those ways. And then the focus becomes less on what is the teacher presenting in a lesson in this curricular area. And it becomes more about what is this community at a school doing to support each other, and recognize when there are needs and people are suffering and people are struggling, whether they're 5 years old or it's the person, the landscaper on campus noticing and taking time. And I agree that there's this long game, but there's also these moments that happen on a daily basis where that was a compassionate act. That was a compassionate act. We don't call it out. We don't sometimes even notice it or or recognize it or celebrate it. But I would love to see more of it and more focus, more attention as maybe a framework for how we make our decisions in schools.
Thank you so much, Emily. Very well said. Very well said. Are there others who would have a thought, in some way want to engage one of our panelists or maybe the panel as a whole?
I can just comment about what would success look like when leading with compassion. I think when I think about the SPC and I think about our council, I think a success would be looking around the room and seeing a bunch of people different than what I look like. I think diversity, I think that would be a success of leading with compassion. I think also making sure that there's space for everyone, that everyone has a voice. I think that would also be a success of leading with compassion. Just making sure it's an inclusive, equitable space.
Yeah, Brett, I love what you said about bringing people in versus pushing them out. I see that on a regular basis of the pushing out in the words, the attention, the looks, it happens from student to student, from teacher to student, student to teacher, etc.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually have a background working in schools and with restorative practices. So I feel like it's all like intertwined for sure.
And unfortunately, we see restorative circles pop up when there's a problem. And that shouldn't be. It should be a common practice, whether it's a community meeting in the classroom or a consistent looking forward to restorative circles as a place where students want to go, not like, oh, we have to go there now.
Right, definitely. You need both the preventative aspect of it and then also afterwards to be able to mediate conflict as well.
I keep hearing the word community come up as we're talking, and that this ability to build healthy, supporting one another, learning compassionate action toward one another, building each other up, creating this framework, this foundation, this power center, really, from which we can then be working on other aspects, other goals, and actually can, I am totally with you, Emily, that it can push us forward in helping us to achieve other things that are that we need to be doing. And those small acts along the way make a big difference. But I'm just struck by this idea of healthy relationships and a community of compassion.
Abigail has her hand up.
Yes, I do. Hi. This has been, this is wonderful. I am a former teacher myself, so this really beats within my heart. And I know that there's a couple of things. Number one, when I was teaching, one of the things I used to do when children had a problem with each other, the biggest thing in my classroom was that moment in time, those two needed to sit down in a special place in the room, wherever they chose, and they need to work out whatever situation, whatever problems they had. They couldn't leave the spot until they were both happy, like the win-win. And I did this in kindergarten. I did this in first grade. I tried to promote it throughout the whole school and no one picked it up. But my classroom worked great. I remember two little boys were just like, on the playground. And I said, okay, let's have a talk zone here. And that phrase actually was coined by my husband. Let's have a talk zone. You guys sit here and you figure this out. And I actually put them right outside the door. And the principal was walking by and he stopped and saw these two little kids talking. He says, "What are you guys talking about?" And they said, "Well, we have a problem. We have to work it out." And that was it. And the principal said, "Okay." He walked on. It was like, so I think we need to really help our children promote, excuse me, ways that they can engage one-on-one with somebody that they're having an issue with. That's really important. The other thing was, a few years ago, I was contacted by a high school senior, and from one of the schools in Poway, saying that there's a lot of bullying going on in the schools, and he really wanted to get more of an interfaith program into the schools. So we really worked at that, going to the school, going to the assistant superintendent, the curriculum director, and all that. And they really liked our ideas. I don't know how much happened there. However, with all the stuff that has been going on in the last couple of years, I really see that the district is moving more in that direction of more respect, and they're not that, non-tolerance kind of thing. But I think there's got to be a lot more one-on-one with the feelings of the kids. And kids now are opting to stay home because they don't want to face the bullies anymore. And to me, I think that's probably one aspect of dealing with it. But the other aspect is we need to deal with it with kids in school at the time, and that's really important. So anything they can do. And I know this online is very hard, because I have teacher friends that have retired like I have, and they've been called back to substitute because the teachers in the schools are just frazzled. And now they're starting up again. And so we just need to hold all of our teachers in prayer for all grade levels, that they have the spirit stamina and soulful spirituality to move forward through the day. And we need to keep them in prayer. That's all I have to say.
And Abigail, what you just said, and then it reminds me of what Dallas was talking about earlier. There's so much that we do in a classroom, those compassionate acts that are physical, just moving closer to a student who maybe is stressed or struggling, putting a hand on their shoulder, catching a glance, smiling, directed at a particular student to support them or tell them, "I've got you." Like you can't do that on Zoom. And so, we've really recognized how much so much happens in a classroom, in a physical space, that just has been lost. And, and there's a good reason why kids have just not shown up, or don't ever turn on their camera, or have gone to some dark places. That human connection, compassion is so much about being in community, being with others.
And it's important. And I know some of the people that I've talked with, is just trying to keep the attention of a 5 or 6 year old when they're bouncing around on the Zoom camera, and and then they go down, and then they leave, and then they come back. It's just stressful, and it's hard. So the more we can do in-house, on ground, in the schools, to promote the compassion actions that everyone's been talking about, is so needed, especially now. We needed it before, but we especially need it now, because somebody was saying that we're all kind of traumatized. We don't even know it, but we're feeling it in our bodies and our energy. And so we need to remember that too.
We're also on high alert. We cannot forget what has happened over the last couple of years, and the anti-Asian violence and the Black Lives Matter movement, and just there's so much in ways that we, finally we're having these discussions about gender equity and about, all of these other issues. So there's also this kind of heightened sensitivity to language, terminology. I mean, look on the screen here with our pronouns. That didn't happen a year ago, where that was a common and understood and respected practice. So this world is changing. It is uncertain. It is volatile. It is ambiguous. It requires our constant attention, and most of all, compassion, to help each other through it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Deborah has her hand up.
Hi, everybody. Sorry I was late. I was having trouble with that link It wouldn't let me in. So I've been waiting for the email or from Abigail. So thank you. I was able to get in on the link that you just sent out. I'm sorry, I've missed this whole conversation. Empathy, compassion, and kindness is the bottom line rule, that we need to follow no matter what community we're in. And with restorative justice and restorative practices, it's a way of being, it's a paradigm. And, the circles and the conferencing and all those components are tools within the paradigm to create an overall cultural shift in how we do life, particularly in the schools. At our school, one of the things our kids have done is they've developed an ally action group, and it consists of education and also direct support. And all it takes is one person in a conflict situation to change the whole dynamic. And those of us on the court, know that's true. We've often been that one person that's de-escalated something and changed the whole mindset of the crowd. So I apologize. I feel a little bit at a loss that I've missed so much of the conversation today. This was the highlight of my day, Dale, to come. And I didn't change my name. I'm Deborah Robin Meck. I'm an educator of 30 plus years. I worked in the court schools for 12 years and then in special ed the last 17. And also I created a program called Spiritual Diversity in Education, which is in restorative practices, we've got tiers, tier 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I consider my program tier 0. And that's if we create that culture of kindness and understanding the essence that exists inside all of us, we don't even need to get to the first level of conflict. So yes, thank you for that in the chat. I will watch the recording. Emily, your name seems so familiar, Dallas too. So I apologize that, again, I don't even know who I'm speaking with yet, but I'm here and I'll put my number and email in the chat, etc. So thanks.
Great. Well, I'm sorry to every difficult getting in on the link. The good news is that we did record this, and we'll put it out in the world so that you can get a sense of the conversation. It ended up being very centered around education. And I think that had a lot to do with the fact that teachers are interested in compassion, and teachers, whether they're in the classroom or outside the classroom, bring that centeredness into everything they do. We are really at a point where we need to call to a close this conversation. Do want to just reemphasize a couple of things that we said on the outset. And this comes from the objectives of both Compassionate San Diego, who's hosting this conversation, and the Compassion Charter, that we're about creating networks of communities that honor compassion in their everyday decision-making and activities. And that compassion might be established as a driving and motivating force and an evaluative principle. And that policies and budgets, whether they be in wherever we are, if it's our homes, if it's our families, if it's our religious institutions, it's our schools, it's our government, to recognize that the policies that we make also need to reflect our desire to make compassion the core of who we are. A Charter of Compassion ends with this thought: we are to honor the inviolable sanctity of every single human being treating everybody without exception with absolute justice, equity, and respect. I firmly believe that compassion is the beginning, middle, and everything of that happening. I'm sorry, I had a phone call come in. I got distracted for a second. I love it when that happens. But thank you so much, all of you, for being here. Special thanks to Dallas and to Emily and Brett for sharing their thoughts. Vianne for being our technical person. There are a number of messages in the chat, not the least of which that I would want you to pay attention to are links to ongoing activities in Interfaith Awareness Week that will be happening for the rest of this week. And we give thanks to Point for organizing this week of understanding how we, as people of faith, no matter how we name the sacred, we are bound together as human beings, as beings of compassion. And thank you so much, Point, for helping bring us together. God bless you all. And I pray that you have a wonderful day and that the sacred source of compassion would be as close to you as your next breath. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.